Arin walked slowly beneath the arching alcoves of the institute, feeling the cool stone under her bare feet. She was small for her age, with ink-dark hair braided to one side and a stubborn set to her jaw. Beside her moved Seely, who carried a thin satchel of tools and a laugh that could brighten a dim corridor. Together they had left their coastal hamlet to study at the academy, a place where scholars and hunters, engineers and tamers learned to live with creatures other people feared. The academy was carved into the side of a mountain that floated above a violet sea. Ships from many worlds docked at its terraces. Alien students passed with tentacles, feathers, crystalline limbs, and soft gas bodies. The halls smelled of oil and salt and something like baked apricot. Posters in many tongues invited students to observe, to learn, to master fear. Arin felt both small and fierce walking under these signs. She had grown up around reef dragons that learned to eat shells without crushing them. She knew how to coax a shy eye to trust. Their teacher that morning was a woman named Margot. She spoke in low, careful sentences and wore a jacket fringe embroidered with starlight thread. Margot told stories of beasts the academy kept for study, creatures with scales like mirrors, with wings that hummed at a pitch the ear could not catch, with eyes that could show memory like a window. Arin listened and thought of the ember hatchling rumored to sleep in containment below. The hatchling had been brought to the academy as an egg from a distant ash world. It had grown silent, sleeping through alarms and storms, and the staff called it the sleeping ember. On the way down to the containment levels, Arin and Seely passed a study group arguing about rules and courage. A small human couple, John and Rhea, paused to squeeze hands in a brief promise. Their closeness made Arin smile. She liked the way people paired up in small alliances, how a shared hand could steady nerves before an observation. The academy encouraged partnerships for fieldwork and for healing. Relationships there were woven into lessons because creatures responded to more than hunger or fear. They responded to patience and truth. The containment level smelled different, like cold metal and old rain. Corridors tightened and lights grew dim. Guards scanned them with pale beams that made their shadows long. The sleeping ember's chamber was a thick-walled room with glass that rippled like a pond surface. When they entered, the hatchling lay curled in a bed of cooled ash no bigger than a cartwheel. Its scales shimmered faintly, an ember tone trapped beneath soot. Around its neck someone had knotted a thin ribbon of blue cloth, faded and frayed with care. Arin felt a tug in her chest she did not expect. Margot asked each student to note the creature's responses. Many scribbled on hollow pads. Some tried to coax movement with the soft chirps the hatchling might know. Others offered food that dragons liked. The ember did not stir. Then an alarm in the far wing began to wail, a routine test that the academy used to test containment integrity. Other beasts in distant chambers reacted with agitated shrieks. The students stepped back. The ember twitched but did not wake. Some whispered that it had been hurt in its journey and that it slept to forget pain. Arin stepped forward, feeling the floor under her feet hum slightly. She remembered old stories where dragons slept to heal and trusted only the tone of a human voice. She knelt by the glass and put her palm flat where the glass shone. She did not shout or wave. She simply spoke in the soft cadence her grandfather had used when calming wild things. She told the ember about small things a human understands. The smell of seaweed on a morning tide. The softness of a blanket wrapped around a tired child. The way the moon paints silver on a wet path. Her voice was low and steady and honest. Seely watched, fingers tight around the strap of her satchel. John and Rhea drew close enough to listen. The other students quieted. A hush wrapped the chamber. The hatchling's eyelids fluttered. A thin plume of smoke escaped its nostrils and curled toward the ceiling. It turned its head slowly, focusing not on instruments or lights but on Arin's silhouette near the glass. Where others had shouted and summoned, Arin had offered story and detail, a human offering of memory and small comforts. The ember blinked once, then twice, and then it closed its eyes again, not sleeping but considering. Suddenly a rumbling shook the containment wing. It was not a machine failing. It felt like the mountain exhaling. Somewhere deeper a second older creature called out, a sound like distant thunder. The guards braced and the observation window trembled. The instructor moved to the control bank, hands flying over panels. The students were told to step back. Arin did not move. She pressed her hand to the glass and kept speaking about sand between toes and the feel of a warm hearth. The ember shifted and pushed a nose against the glass where her palm lay. Then the impossible happened. The sentinel beast in a neighboring cell, a creature that had caused legends to form against the academy gates, rose and bellowed. Lights flickered and an automated notice warned of field strain. For a breath, the system stuttered and containment barriers hummed unsteadily. The other students bolted for the exits. John grabbed Ria's arm and pulled her away. Celie hesitated and then stood with Arin, because that was how friends had always stood when the sea turned wild. The sentinel's roar unlocked something in the ember. Where the hatchling had been curled, it now stretched like a coil ready to spring. Smoke curled and its small wings flexed. The glass between Arin and the creature vibrated. She felt heat and a smell like rain and iron. She did not scream. She sang instead. A small human song about a child who warmed a frost-bitten bird with his scarf. The melody was simple and odd to the alien air, but the ember listened. Its many small horns pricked as if listening for a language of comfort. Margot shouted orders and the staff moved to raise shields. Yet the ember did not lash out. It came to the glass and touched its snout to the place where Arin's palm lay. For a moment the world narrowed to two warm hearts separated by a thin sheet of transparent safety. The ember made no war sound. It nudged the ribbon at its neck and then looked straight at Arin as if choosing. Arin felt a fierce, protective warmth rise inside her. She thought of the village children who had once sheltered a lost hatchling in a hollow boat. She thought of how fear could be met with a hand that did not hurt. The emergency systems clicked and full containment re-engaged. The sentinel's roar faded down the corridors. The staff gave swift, professional commands and examined every sensor. The students were ushered out with calm words that hid the tremor in the academy's bones. Outside, under the violet sky, John squeezed Ria's hand and whispered that he had never seen anything like that. Celie said the ember had chose not to bite or break because it had recognized a human kindness. Arin kept her palm pressed to her side as if holding a small ember there, and she knew something was beginning that would not end in that night's quiet. In the days that followed, Arin would learn the ember's name, and the academy would argue over protocols for bonding with dangerous creatures. Alliances would form and some would distrust the choice of a student over an algorithm. Couples would hold hands on terraces and exchange quiet promises before evening labs. Arin and Celie would be called for fieldwork and healing lessons. But that night the sleeping ember had touched the human world in a way the books did not describe. It had chosen touch over terror, curiosity over hunt, and that choice would ripple far beyond the containment wing into the lives of girls and boys, couples and strangers, in a future that the academy could not yet see. The academy remained uneasy for days after the containment incident. Whispers traveled faster than messages, and by the third morning every corridor hummed with talk about the human girl and the dragon that had moved for her voice. Some called it a miracle. Others said it was a security failure, and a few suggested that the ember's reaction had been something more, a connection that no data chart could explain. Arin tried to go back to her normal schedule. She attended energy theory lectures, shared lunch with Celie and the twins from the mechanical wing, and took quiet walks by the terrace where the violet sea reflected the floating mountains' glow. But her thoughts always drifted to the containment levels. She could still feel the warmth that had pulsed through the glass when the ember pressed its snout against her hand. Margot summoned her one evening to her office. The teacher's expression was unreadable, as the light from a suspended lamp reflected on her jacket's starlight embroidery. "The council wants to observe you," Margot said. "They believe the ember recognized something in you. We don't understand it yet, but we'll run controlled sessions. You'll not be alone, of course. Celie will assist." Arin nodded, trying to appear calm, though her heartbeat quickened. "Why me?" she asked. "Because it ignored everyone else," Margot replied softly, "and because sometimes the academy forgets that knowledge and compassion are the same language." 2 days later, Arin stood again before the observation glass. This time, the chamber lights were gentler, dimmed to the soft gold that dragons preferred. Celie stood behind her, ready with scanning tools that monitored heartbeat and energy flux. On the other side of the glass, the ember stirred. Its scales glowed faintly now, as though something deep within it had rekindled. Arin took a slow breath and spoke. "Do you remember me?" she asked softly. "I didn't mean to scare you. I only wanted to help." The ember shifted, its molten eyes opening to slits. The tail twitched once, then again. It rose and stepped forward. Its wings, small but strong, unfolded and sent dust swirling in the air. The ribbon at its neck had burned away during the containment surge, but a mark of blue still clung to the scales, as if the fabric had melted into the creature itself. "It's responding," Celie whispered. "Watch its rhythm." Margot's voice came through the intercom. "Speak normally, Arin. No fear, no command." Arin kept her hand near the glass but did not touch it this time. She told the dragon stories about her home, the beaches where the waves hissed on black sand, the sound of gulls, and the night she had gotten lost in the fog and found her way home by following a glowworm's light. As she spoke, The ember lowered its head and rested its chin near the transparent barrier. But before the calm could settle, alarms shrieked again. This time they came from the upper halls. Seely looked at her wrist console. Section 3, Energy Wing Breach in External Defenses. Margot's voice sharpened. Non-student entities approaching the perimeter. We have interference. Arin, step back now. The containment glass darkened automatically, sealing off view of the ember. Yet before it faded completely, Arin caught sight of the dragon's eyes narrowing and its body tensing. Something outside the academy had drawn its attention. The floor shook as a muffled explosion rolled through the mountain structure. Students screamed in the distant corridors. Red emergency lights blinked in warning rhythm. Seely grabbed Arin's arm. They're attacking us. Who? The mercenaries, Seely said, breathless. The ones who think the academy keeps weapons instead of creatures. They want the dragons for themselves. Margot's voice returned through the comm. Get to evacuation sectors. I'll lock down the lower chambers. But as they turned to leave, the lights above the containment chamber flickered wildly. The sensors showed unstable readings. The ember cell, now hidden behind the emergency shade, glowed red-hot from within. It's reacting to the attack, Seely said. We have to calm it or the whole section could blow. Arin's instinct overrode fear. She ran back to the glass and shouted, It's not danger for you, Ember. It's danger for us. Please stay calm. Please. Her voice echoed down the steel corridor, soft and desperate. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then light returned through the glass. The ember had pressed its body against the far side, wings half open as though shielding the wall itself. It was protecting the chamber. Margot's voice came again, strained. It's stabilizing the field. I don't understand how. It's amplifying the containment energy. Outside, the sound of battle grew. Alien mercenaries with armor that shimmered like oil were forcing their way in through the eastern hangar. Their ships rained plasma bursts that made the academy tremble. John and Rhea, who had been on the upper floor, joined the defense line with other students. The air smelled of burnt metal and static. Meanwhile, inside the lower wing, Arin and Seely heard another rumble. Louder, deeper, more primal. From the shadows of an adjacent containment cell, a massive silhouette moved. That's the terror beast, Seely whispered, her face draining of color. It was the creature that the Academy's oldest records called the Hollow Dread, a monster of shifting bone and armor captured decades ago. Its roar could paralyze even the bravest. And now, with the outer systems failing, its barriers were weakening. Margot's voice cut through static. Get out now! But it was too late. The glass walls shattered with a deafening crack. Heat and smoke filled the corridor. Seely screamed as debris rained down. Through the chaos, Arin saw the hollow dread emerge, its many eyes burning like dying suns. The creature swung its head toward the sound of alarms and then stopped. Between the dread and the student stood the ember. The small dragon that had once been silent now glowed like a star igniting. It roared not in fury but in defiance. Its flames painted the corridor golden red. No, Arin whispered, eyes wide. It's trying to protect us. The dread lunged, claws scraping metal. The ember met it head on. The shockwave shook the floor. Sparks and smoke filled the air as the two creatures collided. Fire against shadow, light against void. Arin could only cover her head and pray. Then, through the haze, she saw something impossible. The ember's flame formed shapes, patterns of light that pulsed like words. Not random fire, but language. It was trying to speak. Seely's scanner flickered with unknown symbols. Arin, it's responding to your heartbeat pattern. It's syncing with you. What does that mean? It means you're linked. The dread staggered back, wounded by fire that was no longer just elemental. The ember's light burned with purpose, with human rhythm. Its eyes, molten and alive, turned briefly toward Arin. She understood what it wanted. Not escape, not destruction. Partnership. When the final blast faded, silence filled the corridor. The dread retreated into the darkness, wounded but alive. The academy walls groaned. The ember lowered its head beside Arin, smoke curling gently from its nostrils. It blinked once, and she felt a warmth in her chest like the echo of another heartbeat. The academy guards arrived moments later, weapons raised, but Margot stopped them. Stand down, she ordered. The beast isn't attacking. It's guarding them. Arin looked up, soot covering her face, eyes bright with tears. It's not a beast, she said softly. It's trying to help. Margot watched the ember carefully, her expression shifting from fear to awe. Then maybe it's time, she murmured, that we stop calling them monsters. The mountain stabilized, lights flickered back to life, and the surviving students were gathered for medical scans. Outside, the violet sea glowed brighter than usual, reflecting the energy storms above. That night, in her temporary dorm, Arin couldn't sleep. Through the cracked window, she saw the distant glow from the lower levels. The Ember was awake, pacing slowly in its chamber, eyes fixed on the sky. She felt that same heartbeat echo again in her chest, steady, warm, alive. Something had changed between them. The terror beast had chosen a heart, and it was human. And as the night deepened over the floating academy, Arin realized that what had begun as a lesson about fear had become a story about trust, and a bond that might one day change not just the academy, but the fragile peace between humans and the stars. The following morning, the academy woke beneath a fragile calm. Smoke still drifted from the upper terraces, and the air carried the smell of burned circuits and healing resin. But for the first time in decades, the terror beast did not rage behind reinforced glass. It slept, guarded by the very creature once believed to be its lesser. And beside that creature stood a human girl whose name had already traveled through every hall. Arin, the dragon whisperer. She stood with Margot before the council chamber, her uniform torn, soot streaking her face. Sally waited outside, pacing nervously. Inside the chamber, holographic figures of alien professors and human ambassadors shimmered in blue light. They debated in overlapping voices, some worried about danger, others about opportunity. She bonded with an unstable species, said a crystalline counselor, their facets gleaming sharply. That link could compromise our containment protocols, or redefine them, Margot countered. The Ember demonstrated intelligence far beyond classification. It chose not to destroy, but to protect. If that isn't communication, what is? Arin stood silent, her heart drumming hard. The Ember's warmth still pulsed faintly inside her chest like a second heartbeat. She could feel it even now, sensing her anxiety, sending small flickers of reassurance through that invisible bond. Finally, the head counselor, an aged being whose voice hummed like wind through hollow stone, turned to her. "Human girl," they said, "explain what happened in your words. Why did the beast not devour you?" Arin took a breath, trying to steady her shaking hands. "Because it was never trying to," she said softly. "It was scared. When everything went wrong, it didn't want to hurt anyone. It wanted to protect the place that kept it alive. Maybe it heard my voice. Maybe it saw something familiar. I don't know, but it listened. And so did I." Silence followed. The council murmured among themselves. One of them asked, "And the terror beast? What of that creature?" "It's wounded but stable," Margot replied. "And strangely calm. It no longer thrashes in its cell when the Ember is near. Perhaps the Ember's presence soothes it." The old counselor's eyes dimmed thoughtfully. "Two creatures of destruction finding peace through a human connection," they mused. "Perhaps we have underestimated the fragility that breeds strength." The decision came at sunset. Arin and the Ember would be permitted continued interaction under strict supervision. But that night, as the academy's domes glowed under starlight, something else happened, something that no rule could control. Arin slipped quietly down the stairs to the lower levels, Sally following close behind. "If they catch us," Sally whispered, "they'll send us back to the surface. Then we'll say we were checking containment integrity," Arin said with a grin that didn't quite hide her nerves. When they reached the chamber, the lights dimmed automatically. The Ember was awake, its eyes like molten amber in the dark. It lifted its head slowly as they entered, the air shimmering faintly around its scales. Arin stepped closer, no glass between them now, only the soft hum of safety barriers. She held out her hand. "I'm here," she said quietly. "You did well." The dragon tilted its head, studying her. Then it lowered its snout until its breath washed over her skin, warm and faintly sweet like smoldering wood. Sally's scanner flickered wildly. "Arin, it's syncing again. But not just with you. It's broadcasting energy through the academy grid." "What does that mean?" "It means it's healing us," Sally whispered in awe. "Look, the power flow is stabilizing. The whole facility is drawing from its pulse." The dragon blinked slowly, and a low hum filled the chamber. Through the transparent walls, conduits began to glow as if lit from within. Energy readings climbed to safe levels. Systems that had been damaged during the attack came back online one by one. But not everyone saw it as salvation. Far above them, the mercenaries who had fled regrouped. Their leader, a broad-shouldered alien named Dravik, glared at the Academy's lights flickering back to life. "They think they can tame what should be conquered," he hissed. "We'll show them that no beast belongs to anyone." Their ships rose again, this time armed with resonance bombs meant to break through shields by vibration. The first impact struck near the western tower. Alarms blared once more. Inside the containment wing, the Ember roared, a deep, echoing cry that shook the entire mountain. The terror beast in the neighboring cell stirred, its many eyes opening. It began to thrash, but then it paused, turning its massive head toward the sound of the Ember's voice. Arin felt the bond pulse stronger than ever. Images flickered in her mind. Flashes of memory that weren't hers. Volcanic plains, storm skies, other dragons circling in smoke. She gasped. "It's showing me where it came from," she whispered. Seelie looked at her in disbelief. "You can see its thoughts?" "Not see. Feel," Arin said. "It's afraid for us." Another explosion shook the halls. The ceiling cracked. Sparks rained down. Without hesitation, Arin reached out and pressed her hand to the barrier. "Help me," she whispered. "Help them." The dragon's eyes brightened until the whole room was bathed in light. The safety field dissolved, not shattered but melted harmlessly away. The Ember stepped forward, wings unfolding in full, magnificent span. Each feathered scale shimmered between gold and crimson. Seelie covered her face as heat and wind blasted through the corridor. "Arin, what are you doing?" "Trusting it," she said. The dragon let out a sound like thunder breaking water, and then it leapt through the opening. Its body dissolved into radiant flame, passing through walls without burning them. Students ran to windows as a streak of living fire soared into the night sky. The mercenary ships fired in panic, their weapons glowing like angry stars. The Ember twisted and dove, releasing bursts of light that weren't flames but pure kinetic energy. One ship exploded, another lost control and spiraled into the sea. But even as it fought, the Ember never struck to kill. It targeted engines, not pilots. Restraint, not rage. From the tower roof, Arin watched with tears in her eyes. Seelie clutched her arm, unable to speak. The sight was beautiful and terrifying. The creature that the galaxy feared most, fighting not as a weapon but as a guardian. When the battle ended, the sky glowed with dawn. The Ember circled once above the Academy, then descended gracefully to the main terrace. Its scales dimmed until it seemed almost ordinary again, smoke rising gently from its nostrils. Arin stepped forward. "You saved us," she said. The dragon lowered its head and she touched its snout, feeling warmth flow through her. Then, without warning, the Ember looked up toward the horizon. Far away, across the violet sea, something shimmered. Another light, another presence calling. Margot arrived beside them, her coat torn but her eyes full of wonder. "It's not alone," she said. "There are more like it out there." Arin smiled faintly. "Then we'll find them. But not as hunters." The council soon declared the Academy a sanctuary instead of a containment center. No longer would it imprison creatures in cages of fear. It would build bridges between worlds. Students from every species worked side by side, learning not only about anatomy and power but empathy and connection. And at the heart of it all, Arin and the Ember remained. The living proof that strength could come from trust, not domination. Months later, the violet sea shimmered beneath a double moon. On the terrace, Arin stood with Seelie, John, and Rhea watching the Ember soar. It no longer stayed within the Academy's walls. It came and went as it pleased, always returning when Arin called softly into the wind. Seelie nudged her and smiled. "You know," she said, "they still call it the terror beast in the archives." Arin laughed quietly. "Then the archives need rewriting." And somewhere high above the clouds, the Ember roared, not in fury, but in joy. Its voice echoed across the mountains, carrying with it a promise that even in a universe filled with monsters sometimes, all it took to change a world was one human heart that chose to understand instead of fear. The Academy lights glowed brighter that night, shining into the endless dark, and the legend of the human and her dragon began, not as a tale of power but as the story of peace.